So tonight we're going to be working a little bit on the IT band, iliotibial band, which kind of runs down the outer portion of the upper leg. And the IT band is not really a muscle, like we feel it getting tight in that area, but it is not a muscle. It's essentially just a big tendon, some connective tissue. So we actually don't stretch the IT band itself because tendons really don't stretch. We kind of work in the muscles around the IT band just to help everything feel a little bit freer. And usually this helps us to feel freer in both the hips and the knees. And the nice thing is that it can mobilize a whole lot of places because we're actually working a lot of different parts around the leg, the quadriceps, the hamstrings, the glutes, the hip flexors a bit. So we're going to hit a lot of that. And we're going to have a lot of forward folds included in this sequence. So you're welcome to work hard if you want, or you can lighten your load and keep your shapes more supported if that feels more appropriate for you today. For now, we're going to start with the breath. So let yourself find a nice, comfortable position. Doesn't matter at all what the legs are doing. You can let the spine be long. It doesn't have to be super duper long so it feels stressed. Make sure that you can still breathe easily. And really the easiest place to breathe is when we're reclined. So if you choose to start reclined, that's fine too. We're going to be here for a couple minutes. See if you can anchor your breath down in the belly more than the chest, at least start it there. And as you inhale, feeling the belly start to expand, you can lift it higher, expanding the rib cage and then lifting the chest. And as you breathe out, just allowing all of that to retract a little bit. Breathing in and out through the nose as best you can. So breathing down into the belly helps the breath to be a bit more soothing, as opposed to breathing into the chest, which is far more stimulating. And this impacts a lot of things in the nervous system, changes the blood pressure a bit. We can actually reduce blood pressure when we use soothing breathing patterns. You're welcome to close the eyes here, though it is not required. Your next breath, next inhale, you can allow the eyes to open, re-lengthen the spine a bit if it's gotten a little bit droopy. And if you need to just move your limbs around, so that can really be anything. Oftentimes it's the legs, so you might like to kind of point and flex the toes, circle the ankles, but you'll widen the legs, just straighten the legs out. Nothing super right or wrong or required, just to get yourself moving. And we're going to transition onto hands and knees. You're absolutely welcome to place a blanket or towel or even fold your mat over for a little extra padding if your knees feel a bit sensitive here. So coming into this table position, this is a pretty neutral hands and knees shape. Wrists are about under the shoulders. You can have them a little bit in front of the shoulders. Even a hair wider if that feels good. Hips are about stacked above the knees and toes are pointed or tucked as you like. So we're going to keep the spine nice and long. As you breathe in, you're going to let the spine drop down a bit. So the ribcage and spine make their way toward the ground. The sit bones, tailbone, and the collarbones and crown of the head are shifting upward toward the sky. If you have a bigger range of motion, this will easily direct your gaze forward, but that's not required. As you breathe out, pull the low belly in, press down through the hands and arms. You'll feel the crown of the head and tailbone drop as the spine rounds up. So breathing in, it's all reversed. Gravity will help the ribcage and spine drop down, but mindfully tilt the pelvis forward so the tailbone and sit bones lift. And the collarbones are rolling open here too. Breathing out, reverse it. Belly pulls in, hands push down, spine rounds up. And moving with your own breath. Just kind of feeling that the ends of this line, if you have a line from your tailbone up to the crown of the head, the ends are doing the opposite of whatever's happening in the middle. Your next breath, you can come back to a nice neutral starting point. We're going to send the right leg back behind us and keep those toes down on the ground. So you're going to kind of anchor through the toes and press the heel back behind you. So lengthening the calf muscle pretty obviously. With all of these shapes, you can move a little or a lot. Make sure that the resistance that you feel, which in this case would be probably a stretch, make sure that it's at a level where you can still relax and release into it. Now, throughout the entire sequence, allow yourself to breathe freely. Go ahead and release the right leg back to table and we'll replace it with the left. So left leg reaching back, anchor those toes down and press the heel back. Even if this kind of disrupts the previous alignment where the shoulders were stacked over the wrists, don't worry about that. Just get a little resistance in the back of that leg. Release the leg back to your table. If you'd like, you can take the weight off the hands and wrists for a moment. Just kind of circle them around a bit, maybe bend them differently or shake them. Just make sure that you're coming back to that neutral feel. So kind of do a little work or have a stretch and then just let ourselves return to neutrality. And we're going to move into Adho Mukha Shavasana, the downward facing dog pose. So it's going to start in that same table. Wrists about shoulder width apart. Make sure you can press down through the pads of the fingers. You can have your hands up higher as well. So if the ground feels too far away or if it puts too much weight on your wrists, You might like to place your hands on a good block or a table or the seat of a chair. Just lift them up any amount away from the ground, and that'll help you push your weight onto your legs. So toes are tucked under here. And we're going to start to shift the body weight back. So the hips are traveling back. Arms are starting to drift a little farther overhead. Now at some point, we're going to need to press really firmly through the hands and the legs to lift the hips up. You can stop in a crouching cat. So this is a nice position if you feel a little snug. So it doesn't stretch the hamstrings as much as a downward facing dog. It doesn't work the shoulders as much as a downward facing dog. If it's available, you can press your hips back and up farther. Arms moving more fully overhead. Legs starting to straighten more and more, but keep those sit bones lifted. And if it's available, you can press the heels toward the ground, but that might feel a little far away just starting out. So you're welcome to kind of bicycle the legs. Drop one heel toward the ground while the other lifts. Inhale, lift them both, and exhale, alternating sides. Soft through the neck and shoulders here. So arms are overhead when that's happening. The shoulder blades are not pulling away from the ears. They don't have to be squishing toward the ears either. There's a nice happy middle ground in there. When you're ready, you can either drop back to your knees and transition from there, or sort of walk the hands and feet toward each other. Let the knees bend. Wave your way up to standing. So we're coming into a standing crescent pose. Some people will call this a different version of a half moon. And we're going to see this leg position a lot today where the legs are crossed over. And that's because that IT band runs along outside. So when we slide that leg across, it just naturally lengthens that position already. In this case, we're going to send the right leg behind the left. So maybe it just goes back. Make sure you're stable. You can cross it behind the left leg, so your right foot's actually off to the left. Then we're going to send either the right arm only or maybe both arms up and overhead and side bend to the left. Now, a lot of these shapes, even though we're talking about the IT band, they're just going to pull where you're tight. So like for my body, I don't have anything going on in the legs and hips. This is all in my right side waist here. That's where I happen to be tight. Your body could be completely different. So all shapes are whole body postures. Even if there's a focus on just one area, it's still doing a lot more for a lot more areas. Go ahead and release the arms. You can always soften the knees a little bit. We're going to pull ourselves back to just a central standing point. So really coming back to a mountain pose in between a lot of standing postures. Let your feet be about parallel, about hip width apart, nice and tall through the spine. Arms just relaxing, shoulders back and down a bit. And we'll reverse this. So left foot is traveling behind. So this starts to put a pull kind of around the hip flexors for a lot of people. Then we're going to cross that leg behind. This sends it a little more outer for many people, and it can still be in front too. So again, just feel it where you feel it. We're going to inhale and send either the left arm only up or maybe both arms. You can clasp your hands together if that helps to secure it. Side bend to the right. Make sure you can keep breathing here.
And release the arms down. Let your feet come back and find that neutral mountain pose. So standing toward the front of your mat, which will be the short edge of your mat tonight. We're going to move through a waterfall action a few times just to, again, wake up the hamstrings a little bit more. So as you breathe in, we're going to send the arms up and overhead if that works for you. If it doesn't, don't worry about it. You can leave them down. And breathing out, soften the knees a little bit. Tip the pelvis forward. So it kind of feels like you're sticking your bottom out as you move into a standing forward bend. So this can be really deep or not deep at all. Keep the knees bent. We're going to inhale just halfway up to neutralize through the spine and the tailbone. As you exhale, pull the belly in, waving your way up. You'll feel the chest begin to open. That's when you breathe in and send the arms up. And with your exhale, standing forward bend. As things open up in the back of the legs, you do not have to bend the knees going down, but we definitely bend them coming up. Inhaling halfway up. Exhale, support the spine as you wave your way up. Breathing in, feel the pose, arms reaching overhead if that's available. And one more time, breathing out, standing forward bend. Little bend of the knees as you inhale halfway up from wherever you are. And breathing out, supporting the spine, lifting up. And breathing in, arms can reach. Exhale, just relax the arms down at your side, and you are right back in your mountain pose. So we're moving into a standing forward bend, and we're going to cross those legs again. So we're going to hold this one a little while. So this is a shape that you might like, maybe, to have a little support under the hands. So that can be really anything that you have in your space. And if you have a pretty deep bend, you can definitely get the hands on the ground or use a yoga block or whatever. So this time we're going to cross the right leg in front of the left. So make sure that your position is stable as you move into this shape. And you can have the legs wider if that's comfortable for you. So it's not particularly comfortable for my body. I'd rather have them a little bit closer. It kind of tweaks my hips poorly if I send the legs too far out when they're crossed, but you do you. So we've already got the bend. We're going to inhale up nice and tall. And as we exhale, we're folding forward from the hip hinge. So again, we're kind of feeling like you're pressing your bottom out behind you a little bit. Moving into this standing forward bend. Now this is where if you get your hands on something to support you, something that's not your body, basically, it's going to help things feel just a little bit stretchier. You don't have to work really hard for balance or to hold yourself in a certain position. You can let yourself release a little more in lower body. So if you're looking for a pull, this might be the way to go. Now, when we cross the legs, what is really happening? So we're using a pretty big version of adduction, meaning your limbs are moving toward your center, and in this case, kind of off in the opposite direction. So we're still essentially stretching the back of the leg, but it's starting to address not just the hamstrings as a general group, but more toward the lateral hamstrings, which are muscles that are in the upper leg, in the back, and a little off to the side. It is kind of hard to bend the knees in this position to exit out of this shape as we normally would. So we're going to instead inhale up with a flat back. So either method is fine, but when you're rolling your way up, you do need to bend your knees. So to come up with a flat back, we have the option of keeping the legs straight and breathing in, lifting back up to vertical. Be mindful of any dizziness here and just uncross the legs. So that's a benefit of exhaling on your way up, is it helps to manage your blood pressure a little bit, and we don't tend to feel that lightheadedness when we're coming up. So we're going to cross the left leg in front of the right. Your hips are still pretty well just forward here. Again, you can widen your feet as much or as little as you like. You're going to inhale up nice and tall. And as you breathe out, the whole pelvis is tipping forward. And using any amount of support that you like under the hands. Hopefully this can address some tension down a bit below the knee as well. The IT band basically connects your hips to your knee, and the knee doesn't really just include things above it. There are muscles below it as well. So all this connective tissue is coming in a lot of different places, hooking onto a lot of different muscles. And we're going to inhale our way up this time. So as you breathe in, lifting up with a flat back. And uncrossing the legs, just establishing a mountain pose, nice and neutral. And we'll move through one round of the waterfall. So as you inhale, send the arms up overhead, just feel nice and tall and symmetrical. As you exhale, standing forward bend with or without a bend in the knees. You can still use support under the hands if you like. Here on the way up, we'll soften those knees, inhale halfway up to neutral. And as you exhale, support the spine to wave your way up. Chest will open, breathe in, arms can reach up if you like. And exhale, mountain pose. Moving into partial Tanasana, this is a side or flank stretch position. Again, I think it's really helpful if you like to have a little bit of support under the hands. It can be anything, and that helps balance as well. So here we're going to breathe in, get heavy on your right leg. As you breathe out, reach the left leg back. Now, if you feel really unstable in this shape, you can kind of heel toe your front foot a little bit out to the side so the feet are truly hip distance apart. Otherwise, you can keep them a little more narrow. So it's like a back heel and front heel are almost aligned, sort of front heel to back arch kind of. So again, we're having that adduction with the front leg moving towards center. We're going to keep the legs straight if we can and keep the hips relatively square. They don't have to be perfect, but they're moving toward a squared position. We're going to breathe in, get nice and tall, open through the chest. And as you breathe out, folding forward over the front leg. Hands can rest on a little support if you like. And that can help you really get the hang of what your hips are doing too. When you don't have to work so hard with balance, you feel a little freer to play with it. See if there's one hip that's lifting or dropping, or if the left hip is really rolling back, something of that nature. It's literally called a flank stretch. So that actually is getting us right in the position that we need to be. But again, you can feel this in a lot of different positions. There's still a lot going on in the calf muscles here. And there's actually some work going on in the flank as well. It's not all about stretch. Now you can choose to work the muscles of the back as well. So if you remove that support from under the hands, it's going to really strengthen muscles along the spine and in the back body in general. You might feel a little more of that strengthening action coming into the legs as well. So strengthening the back itself is really, really helpful this time of year for things like shoveling And we are moving into gardening season as well in spring and summer. So that's pretty helpful going into that also. I'll give you the option. If you want to work harder, make sure you're stable first. If you have your hands on something, then release it and you can inhale up with a flat back. If you want to give the back a little break, soften that front knee, breathe in here. And as you breathe out, you can wave your way up. From there, you can inhale, shift your weight forward. And as you breathe out, pull the left foot up. Take a moment in mountain pose. Inhale. Heavy on the left leg, and as you breathe out, right leg back. So that right foot's probably going to be a little bit angled out. If you have it angled out super far, it's going to be hard to roll the right hip forward, so it'll end up rolling back, and you'll kind of have to twist through the waist to face the front foot. See if you can just get everything facing the front foot aside from the right foot. So your back foot's angled out just a tiny little bit. Straight legs if you can. Inhale up nice and tall. As you breathe out, tilt the pelvis forward. The chest remains open, front of the body is still long. Notice how you have to press through the outer edge of the right heel to keep the hips from shifting a whole lot. And again, if you choose, you can place your hands on a solid, stable object, a piece of furniture, blocks, maybe the ground, whatever you can reach. And that will free you up a little bit to just kind of see what hip position works best for you. Now again, you're going to feel this where you're tight. So a lot of people are inhibited in the forward fold by hamstring tension. For me, this is all about the calves. My hamstrings are just fine. So everybody has their own experience. Make sure your legs are working so you feel really stable. Again, you have the option of inhaling and lifting up with a flat back, or softening the front knee and exhaling up, waving the spine up a little bit. From there, you can inhale, shift your weight forward. As you breathe out, pull the right foot up, planting it down in your mountain pose. So again, establish that feeling of neutrality. We're going to breathe in here, send the arms overhead. As you breathe out, standing forward bend. Hang out there for a moment. We're going to be moving through a transitional shape. So we've already seen the table, that counts. We've seen the downward facing dog, that counts too. And we briefly had the crouching cat, so that too is an option. So from here, and inhale about halfway up, make sure the spine is long. You can already get the feel of lifting your sit bones as opposed to tucking the tailbone down. So it'll feel really long through the front and the back of the trunk. Breathe out and plant the hands on the ground, your version of the ground, wrists or shoulder width. And you can step back to your table, maybe the crouching cat, or all the way back to that upside down V, the downward facing dog. Now, if you're in a down dog, you might even choose to just kind of twist yourself a little bit. You can actually lift the heels, twist the knees and toes in one direction, drop the hips the other way. Just kind of open yourself up in different ways here. You're ready, no matter what position you're in, we're going to wave our way forward to a plank. You can have it higher or drop the knees, that's okay. And then just lower everything down to the ground. So we're going to come to a Sphinx position as opposed to a more active cobra. Sphinx is a little more passive, where we're going to practice it today. So you can actually start totally flat. Make sure you can really relax through the back and the hips. And then just slowly start to lift yourself up a little bit by pulling the elbows in. So in a final position, you would kind of have your elbows about underneath your shoulders. Shoulders are not squished up into your ears. You're going to drive them down toward the ground. And again, just let everything relax. So this is another really great posture for things that we kind of have to do at this latitude, this time of year for shoveling. And again, it is awesome for gardening. So we talked a little bit about connective tissue, and we've talked in the past that connective tissue is really slow to move. It's a stubborn kind of tissue. So it's really slow to lengthen and it's slow to shorten as well. So you may notice as you are working in a bent over position, regardless of what that's from, when you stand up, the back, the low back can feel really weirdly stiff. And that can be your connective tissue saying, hey, we were really long for kind of a long time, and now we're being asked to shorten again. This is a great shape to just kind of reclaim the natural curve of your lumbar spine. Now we're going to build off this for a half frog variation. And this is going to work your quadriceps. There are a couple of ways you can do this. I'm going to give you some options here. I'm going to ask you to start with your right leg. I'm going to start with my left just because that's closer to the camera and it'll be easier to see what I'm doing. So you might even like to start flat. We're going to bend the right leg up. So it's like your heels coming toward your backside. Left hand's going to reach around and catch the foot or the ankle. If you can't reach it, this is where a strap comes in handy. Just loop it around the limb and hold that in your hand instead. Just pull that foot toward your body. So you can kind of feel some length coming into the front of the thigh muscle. If you need more length, you can actually lift yourself up, prop yourself up on the left arm, and pull again with the hand. Now, this is pretty relatively at least squared in and centered in those quadricep muscles, just in the front of the upper thigh. So we can gear it more toward the outer muscles by rotating the hip joint inward, which means your right foot is going to drift out to the side. And everything else is just the same. Now be mindful that this is comfortable for your knee. You don't want to create a lot of twist in the knee joint. So there's rotation in the hip first, then the flexion of the knee joint. That's the foot coming up toward the body. And direct that pull a little more in your outer quadriceps versus just the center group. Okay, release that leg, let it straighten out. You might even like to let your upper body just flatten out a little bit more. You can rest the head down on the arms any way it's comfortable. And in between sides, you're welcome to kind of bobble the hips a little bit from side to side. Maybe it feels good to bend both knees or neither. So you're just kind of bringing yourself back to neutral once again. Do this again, second side. So it'll be your left leg, left knee bending. Foot coming up toward the back side. Whatever happened on the first side might give you an idea of what to do on the second side, but you can always start in the smallest version, leaving the upper body down, reaching back, see if you can connect with the foot and just pulling it in. Or again, you can support yourself up higher, so kind of a Sphinx position in the upper body a little bit. Reaching back with the left hand to connect with the leg or foot in some way. You can rotate the left hip inward, which sends the foot out to the side, if that feels good for you. Using a lot of props can get a bit cumbersome, but if it feels tiresome to hold yourself up in this position, you can always place supports under the upper body as well. So if you like it being elevated and everything else that's going on in the posture, it just feels tiresome for the supporting arm, it's totally fine to prop yourself up with blankets, pillows, bolsters, blocks, whatever you have available. Go ahead and release that foot. Just let everything come back to center. Again, lower the upper body down if it's elevated. Let things neutralize through the back. You can even take some really deep breaths down into the belly. That'll help expand the tissues of the lower back. So remember that connective tissue goes both ways. So if we've had it in kind of a gentle arch in the back with an extension, it might feel a little tight when you come back out to neutral or any sort of flexion. So that's actually pretty normal to feel that. That's just how connective tissue works, but it is something to be mindful of and always be respectful of what you're feeling. Now you really can get there any way you want, maybe roll to the side or maybe press yourself up from here, but we're going to be transitioning to seated. And when we're doing seated postures, it's a nice idea in many cases to have some support under the hips. So again, blocks, bolsters, blankets, folded towels, couch cushions. It doesn't matter what it is, it's whatever you have. So we're coming into a half Lord of the Fishes pose. So I'm going to flip around so you can see this right leg a little better. Left leg's going to be lengthened out long. Long doesn't have to mean straight, but you might like a little support under the knee if you need to keep it bent. Spine's reaching up, and the right knee is bending, so that right foot is coming up real close to the hips. We're going to cross the right foot over the left leg. Now, this is good if you feel a little restricted and you already have a big pull here. This is a good spot for you. If you need a little more, we're actually going to bend the left knee and pull that left foot by the outer right hip. So we try to keep the right knee just pointed up toward the sky as opposed to dropping out. If it's dropping out, it's kind of an indicator of some excess tension there. So you might like to, place a little support under the hips to help things open up a little bit more and just feel a little more space in your shape. So I'm just going to kind of hold this leg here. Inhale up nice and tall, and you can stop right here. You do not need to twist, but if it's available, we're going to twist the left side of the body toward the bent knee and hug the left arm around it as we twist clockwise through the upper body. So this is going to give pretty big pull, maybe even down in the gluteal area and coming up through the side of the leg for a lot of people. Again, a lot of people are going to feel this in the waistline or the lower back when they're twisting, so just feel what you feel. Go ahead and release your twist. Release your legs out as well. If you like to fully straighten them out, that's perfectly fine. You can always windshield wiper the legs between sides if you need to actually really loosen up the tissue and just feel like, hey, things are free to move in lots of different directions. And we're going to go the other way. So the right leg again can stay out long, and the left leg bending, the foot eventually crossing to the outer edge of the right leg. Maybe this is where you're at today for half Lord of the Fishes. Everything else would work the same, just twisting toward that leg. If you want to go one step farther, the right knee bends and the right foot comes toward the outer edge of the left hip. So again, we inhale up nice and tall, this twist in the end, so we like to keep the spine long here. As you breathe out, twisting counterclockwise this time. So remembering that it's not important how far you move in any of these shapes. What you feel in your body is going to guide you as to how far to move. So your body's only going to comfortably allow just so much movement in any given direction. And it's important to listen to that. So we actually teach the body to relax in these shapes as opposed to just hanging on to protective tension. you're ready, you can release the twist if you've taken it and release the legs as well. So again, you can stretch them out or and a windshield wiper things, just whatever feels appropriate for you to bring in that neutral feel. And we're going to move into a cow face pose. You're not worried about the arms today and the shoulders. And this is another one where you might really like a little bit of height underneath the hips. So it kind of starts the same way as the half lord of the fishes. So you can do a half cow face, again with the left leg out, cross the right foot over, but this foot comes much deeper this time. It's coming up outside the left hip, and the knees end up stacking above each other, and there's a lot more outward rotation in the right hip. So this is fine, and you could even actually fold forward in this position and get a pull in the back of the left hamstring if that's what you're going for. Otherwise, you can pull the left foot by the right hip, right foot is by the left hip, and here the knees are dropping. So they're again trying to stack above each other. If it feels like it's just impossible, like if you're down on the ground and it feels just really, really tight and you're kind of bunched up, get that height underneath the hips. It'll really help things to open up. So you want some resistance, of course, otherwise, you know, it's why are you here, physically at least, but you don't want it to be overwhelming. So you're not teaching your body to just keep gripping in a protective fashion, but instead, encouraging it to let go. Now, usually the legs have enough resistance here for the average person. You can attempt to fold forward if that's available. Now, on the flip side, some people actually feel better if they recline this position. So in that case, I would recommend just being reclined and then setting up the legs. It's the same leg position, just reclining. And that actually shifts things a little bit more from behind to in front a bit. Once you're in shape, you really don't need to do anything special. Let yourself breathe. See if you can resist the urge to fidget around a lot. So just taking care to get your shape set up initially. Of course, if you have to make changes, obviously that's fine. You can always make a change. But just kind of getting things where it feels sustainable from the start as best you can, and allowing yourself to be there. So sitting in a still shape for a while gives you opportunity to just be with your breath. Observe any thoughts or feelings that pop up for you. You might even notice that the place you were trying to stretch isn't the place that really needed it at all. You can become aware of other areas of the body that are holding tension. We're going to shift back, maybe leaning back a little bit. You can also use the hands to just help move the bones of the legs if things feel a little stiff. So get some space in the ankles, the knee joints, even the hips. So if you need to really lean back and just kind of move yourself around, feel free to do that. And we'll reverse the legs. So again, the right leg might be straight, the left leg crossing over and pulling that foot closer to the hip as best you can. So whether the right leg is straight or bent, if everything feels really congested in the hips, you might just like to add a little height under them, and that will really make some more space. So another option is to bend the right knee. And see if you can kind of stack things up. So like my left hip doesn't want to let go too well here today. So I'm going to go ahead and add a little height underneath that so I can get a more appropriate sense of resistance over here. Again, hands can help, and you might even need to lean back a little bit, but hands can help to move the bones of the legs if things feel a little stuck. And just using some gentle movement or sending the legs out long to make a little extra space. And from here, we're going to move into a recline position. You're welcome to have something under the head. So if you like a little pillow, like a blanket or an actual pillow, that's fine. So making sure everything is nice and neutral in the head and shoulders. You might need to kind of pull your shoulders under a little bit, and you can have your knees bent or legs out long. This is just whatever you like. Big inhale, and as you breathe out, pull the belly in. We're going to pull the knees up toward the chest. Now, they don't have to stay in close, like they're literally coming toward the chest. If that feels congestive toward the hips in the front, let the knees widen a little bit. And just kind of gently drawing those legs closer to the body no matter what. This is a nice release if the low back feels short. Make sure to let your low belly relax here so your hands are managing the weight of the legs. Core doesn't have to do anything. We've also a nice little reset for the tailbone after a lot of asymmetrical postures. You're ready, you can release the legs together or one at a time if that feels more appropriate. And you're moving into Shavasana, which is your relaxation pose. This can be a traditional Shavasana, just lying flat, legs out long, arms alongside the body or spaced a bit away, but with palms facing upward. You can also take legs at the wall or an alternate leg position. Some people like soles of the feet together, knees dropping out to the side, or reclined cobbler. Others like the opposite, feet about mat width and knees dropping inward, constructive rest. In any case, seeing if you can rest with those palms facing upward. If not, allow them to just rest on the belly.
So letting your entire body relax here. Turning to a nice, easy breath. Softening consciously through the face, the eyes, the neck. As each part of you softens any little bit, allow that to be shared with the next part. Shoulders releasing, arms letting go, spine softening, releasing tension in the rib cage, side waist, low back, belly. Finding ease through the hips, the upper legs, the IT band. Softening through the knees, releasing all the way down through the lower legs and into the feet and toes. Inviting a little movement into your system here. Maybe wiggling fingers or toes, kind of rubbing the thumbs along the tips of the fingers. Maybe a big stretch, deeper breaths. Eventually bending one or both knees, and from there rocking off to the right side if you can. And letting your arms help you to press up to a nice comfortable seated position. And drawing hands, palms together at the heart center. Namaste.